Hey guys, it's Miss Nicole here with a Silly Sundays. Today we're going to be doing silly hats. Do you guys have any silly hats? I don't have many silly hats. I've got some cool hats and some fun hats and maybe a hat that I like. Maybe I wouldn't go to work in, or maybe I wouldn't wear it to a wedding or anything super nice, but it's a fun hat, and for today, we could pretend that this hat, or rather headband, this headgear, if you will, is silly. So here's my silly hat. Alright, we're just going to pretend that it's nice and silly. Okay? And we're going to read some stories about hats, silly hats. So if you guys are ready to follow along, we are going to get started with our first book. This is a fun book. I love this book. I think it's super, super fun, super entertaining, and it's just a really great book all around. I'm being very silly today. So this story is called We Found a Hat, and this is by the author John Klassen. This book has been around for a while, and many people love it. So if you've heard it, I hope you can enjoy listening along today again. So, We Found a Hat. Part 1. Finding the Hat. This reminds me of the hat of the man in Curious George. Right? That kind of looks like his tall hat. We found a hat. We found it together. But there is only one hat, and there are two of us. Two of who? What are these? Are those elephants? No. Are those doggos? No. Those are turtles, right? Yeah, we got turtles wearing hats. That's a little silly. How does it look on me? Said the one turtle. It looks good on you. How does it look on me? Said the other turtle. It looks good on you too. I think it looks silly. You can't even see. It looks good on both of us, but it would not be right if one of us had a hat and the other did not. There's only one thing to do. We must leave the hat here and forget that we found it. Do you think they're going to do that? I see this turtle using his shifty eyes to look back at that hat. He's gazing. He's putting his gaze back to that hat, huh? Part 2, watching the sunset. How pretty that sunset is. We are watching the sunset. We are watching it together. What are you thinking about? I am thinking about the sunset. What are you thinking about? What do you think he's thinking about? I know, but do you know? Nothing, said the turtle. What's he thinking about? Part 3, going to sleep. There's our hat sitting alone in the desert. Still, we are going to sleep. We are going to sleep here together, said the turtle. See them sleeping up there on that rock. Are you almost asleep? I am almost asleep, said the other turtle. Are you all the way asleep? I am all the way asleep. I am dreaming a dream, said the turtle. I don't know about you, but I don't answer people in my sleep very often. I know some people do, so if you do, go ahead and leave a comment below, because I think that's kind of cool. What are you dreaming about? I will tell you what I'm dreaming about. Wonder what it is. I am dreaming that I have a hat. It looks very good on me. You are also there. You also have a hat. It looks very good on you, too. Look at them in space with their silly hats. You can't even see. I can't get over that. That's just so silly. We both have hats, said the turtle. What did he do? Did he leave the hat behind? His friend dreamt that they both had hats, so he turned around and left it. And there they are, dreaming that they both have hats, floating off into space. The end. All right, so that's that fun story. There are more stories that go along, like, oh, wow, my mouth is being silly today, and I just can't talk. There are more stories that go along with this one, that follow this one. So if you really like this story and you want to continue hearing more stories, go ahead and look out for those. I think they're super fun. So I would like to do a little bit of a song, because I think it's fun. Okay, so I have my silly hat on, or the closest thing that I could have to a silly hat. Okay, they're my Minnie Mouse ears. Okay, and I've got some silly socks on, and they might not look silly because they're just polka dots, but would they be silly if my other was dinosaur? I have 2 different socks on. Is that normal? I mean, I kind of think it's normal, but, like, can we just call it silly? It's a little silly. Yeah. It's a little silly that I have 2 completely different socks on. And one is dinosaurs. One is polka dots. What? I'm sure you guys have some silly socks. And even if you don't have any silly printed socks, maybe you have some mismatched socks. Ones that don't match. They don't go together. So maybe you could put on some silly socks with your silly hat. And I have a silly scarf. This is my silly scarf. And it looks pretty normal, right? But I'll tell you why it's silly. It's silly because if I stand up, you'll see how long this thing is. It's almost as long as me. It goes down to my ankles. This silly scarf goes all the way down to my ankles. So silly. So I'm going to sing a song with you guys. And during this song, you guys can alter it however you want to, put whatever word in you want, and you could do your own little parade, okay? We're going to do a silly hat parade, okay? So, here we go. We're going to do this to the tune of Baby Shark. All right? You ready? Here we go. Silly hat doo 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 doo, silly hat doo 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 doo, silly hat doo 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 doo, silly hat. Silly scarf doo 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 doo, silly scarf doo 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 doo, silly scarf doo 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 doo, silly scarf. Silly socks doo 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 doo, silly socks doo 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 doo, silly socks doo 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 doo, silly socks. Make a march, do 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 do. Make a march, do 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 do. Make a march, do 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 do. Make a march, and you might march like this in your parade, right? Okay. So then the last part is have a parade, do 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 do. Have a parade, do 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 do. Have a parade, do 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 do. Have a parade. that works, right? So maybe you don't have a silly scarf, maybe you have silly gloves, maybe you have a silly mug to hold in your hands, maybe you have silly glasses, maybe you have a silly mask, like a Halloween mask, okay? So you can make that song whatever you'd like to make it. Maybe you have some silly pajamas that you could put on for this, okay? So I want you guys to have fun and have a nice little parade with your family, okay? All right, so now we're gonna read another story. I think this book is super fun, mostly because I love hats, and I also love dogs. This story has a dog in it, and his name is Mr. Pockles. That's a silly name, Mr. Pockles. Oh, my hair is doing a silly right now. Maybe I'll leave it like that. Do we like that? Is that super silly? I'll leave my hair like that. Okay, this story is called Hats Off to Mr. Pockles by Sally Lloyd Jones and David Litchfield. There he is. Mr. Pockles. For Mr. Pockles, going without a hat was as unthinkable as going around without any pants on. That's silly. He had a hat for every occasion. An eating cornflakes hat, a having a little sit-down hat, a drinking cups of tea hat, an in-the-bath hat, a going-to-bed hat. His only sadness was that he couldn't wear all of them at once. There was one hat he never wore because it was too special and he was saving it for best. So there are all of his silly hats. At the very top, his eating cornflakes. Here's his cups of tea, his little sit-down, and his bath hat. And there is his going-to-bed hat. Those are super fun hats. And there is his very special, never-worn hat. It's pretty fun. I really like those feathers. Maybe it was because he was too busy with his hats to go out and meet people. Or maybe it was because he was terribly shy. But whatever the reason, poor Mr. Pockles had no friends. Sometimes he was a little lonely. But then he had only to think of his millions of hats and pop one on. It's funny how wearing a hat cheers a personage up, says Mr. Pockles. That means a person. Until one morning, when it didn't. Uh-oh. It was hat day at the Pandapolitan Club, and Mr. Pockles desperately wanted to go and show off all of his hats. But only pandas were allowed. And pandas, as everyone knows, are very black and white. Either you are a panda, or you are not a panda. That means he couldn't go, huh? So to cheer himself up, Mr. Pockles went to Treat House instead to buy himself a bun. I shall wear my jaunty hat with a friendly feather, he said thoughtfully. And to his delight, when he got there, Mr. Pockles found it was Bun of the Month day. The buns this month were tasty, licious, fluffy fudge bonnets. As he was waiting in line for his Bun of the Month, who should walk in but a panda? "It is I, Lady Coco Fitztulip," she announced as she sailed to the front of the line. Lady Fitztulip was a fourth-generation San Francisco panda, and very important, and even had streets named after her. She was wearing the most unusual hat Mr. Pockles had ever seen. He couldn't stop staring at it. "I'm late for hat day at the Pandapolitan Club," she cried, waving an invitation in the air. "I must start my spring in style," she said. Look at her hat. A fruit hat. The shop went silent. Everyone felt depressed. They wanted to start their spring in style too. But they didn't have any hats, and they weren't pandas. Meanwhile, certain baby bunnies, who'd been waiting in line a long time, were awfully hungry. Miss took Lady Fitztulip's hat for the bun of the month and started eating her hat. Before anyone realized they'd eaten the bananas, the grapes, and they were halfway through the pineapple and had just started on the chopsticks. So silly. That must have felt awful for the panda. "My ancestral hat!" Lady Fitztulip screamed. "Help! Help!" It was too late. The ancestral hat fell to the floor, demolished and destroyed. The baby bunnies leaped off the hat and vanished under their mother's skirt. So an ancestral hat means that it was passed down from her family members. So it was a very important hat. "Whatever shall I do now?" Lady Fitztulip wailed. "It's hat day, and I don't have a single—" Everyone rushed around. They picked up her bag, they sat her down. Mr. Pockles gave her his bun. "Most kind, thank you, sir," she said. "You're most welcome, madam." "My aunt made hats, you see," she explained through a mouthful of bun. "Her mouth was all full. Everybody pretend to have a full mouth and talk so silly." That's not really how it sounds. I'm really bad at it, huh? Very silly. "Oh, how lovely," said Mr. Pockles. "But they were all lost in the earthquake." "Oh, how horrible," said Mr. Pockles. "And now I don't have a single hat." She began crying again. Everyone hung their heads. Mr. Pockles blinked. It was quite the most awful story he had ever heard. But then Mr. Pockles jumped up. "It is I, Mr. Pockles. Lady Fitztulip, we haven't a moment to lose. Hold on to your hats, everyone." And even though they didn't have any hats to hold on to, there was nothing to do but follow Lady Fitztulip and Mr. Pockles all the way to Hat House. There they go. Mr. Pockles ran straight upstairs. "Dear Lady Fitztulip," he said, It was his special hat. It was so beautiful it made all of the air go out of the room. He put it on her head and showed it to her in a mirror. Here she is wearing the hat. "Oh," she gasped, "Mr. Pockles!" And before Mr. Pockles knew what was happening, she picked him up and hugged him. She turned to the door. "We haven't a moment to lose." She dropped Mr. Pockles. "Hold on to your hats, everyone." "Where are you going?" "To the Pandapolitan Club," she cried. Everyone's eyes grew huge. Everybody make your eyes real big. Can you cross them? Look at your nose. Real silly, huh? "Didn't I say friends of pandas are invited too?" "Friends?" asked Mr. Pockles. "Yes, of course," she said. Mr. Pockles stood there stunned as Lady Fitztulip chose the perfect hat for him. The room filled with cheers. Yay! Mr. Pockles looked around and laughed. "Your turn, everyone. Choose your hats." And they did. Even the sun put his hat on. And so it was that Lady Fitztulip got a beautiful new hat. And Mr. Pockles went to Hat Day with all of his hats all at once. But even better, with all of his new friends. Look at that. The sun even put a hat on. So silly. Look at them all together. That's so fun. Just before they entered the Pandapolitan Club, Lady Fitztulip turned, raised her hat, and cheered, "Hats off to Mr. Pockles! Woo!" And they all threw their hats. The end. And now my hair is all silly. Silly Willy. There we go. Alright, guys. I hope you enjoyed those stories. I thought that was fun, silly. It gets everybody moving and laughing. And now I want you guys to do an activity for me. I want you to sit down. I want you to imagine the silliest hat you could possibly come up with, okay? And I want you to draw it for me, okay? And if you guys feel like it, go ahead and send it to us at the library. Go ahead and send it to our emails. Those are listed on the website. Or send them to us on Facebook. So, I hope you guys are having a great day. Be super silly. Have a super great, super silly day. And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.